early times, the Parthian Empire was a superpower of its own. The Parthians were rivals of Rome and many other powerful empires of the time. The empire itself was one of the biggest of its time. Hello and welcome to our channel. Today, we will be talking about the Parthian Empire, its army, and the many campaigns that the empire took part in. From 247 BC to 224 AD, the Parthian Empire, also known as the Arsacid Empire, was a great Iranian political and cultural power. The empire was immense, extending from the Mediterranean to India and China in the east. They were a nomadic tribe that arose from the Central Asian steppe east of the Caspian Sea. They were previously known as Parni, before being renamed Parthians. They took over the Seleucid Empire and held off the Romans. They consolidated their position as a superpower. The wide region they conquered brought them into touch with goods and cultural influences from all around their empire, thanks to their unique and incredibly effective combat method. Seleucus I, one of Alexander the Great's generals, founded Parthia. Alexander's generals divided the captured lands after his death. Seleucus established the Seleucid Empire by conquering Mesopotamia and other territories historically crucial to Persia. Parthia began as a Seleucid satrapy, but quickly became its own power. With the Seleucids weakened by internal struggle and battle with the Ptolemies in the west, the Parni moved east from Parthia. The Parthians seized a large portion of the territory previously controlled by the Seleucid Greeks. The Parthians took over the all-important Fertile Crescent territory of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, known as Mesopotamia, which was key to Old Babylonian, Persian, and Seleucid interests. With so many internal and external battles, the Parthian Empire required an army which was established. The rebellion was a common occurrence in the realm and was the empire's most serious flaw. Despite the fact that the Parthian Empire had no standing army, they were able to swiftly enlist men in the case of a local crisis. A constant armed guard was assigned to the king's person. Garrisons were also kept in border forts on a permanent basis. Diplomatic gestures were also made with military personnel. The Parthian army's main attacking force was its cataphracts, heavy cavalry with men and horses decked in mailed armor. The cataphracts were armed with a lance for rushing into enemy lines, but not with bows and arrows, which were only available to horse archers. Due to the high expense of their weapons and armor, cataphracts were recruited from the aristocratic elite, who, in exchange for their services, requested local autonomy from the Arsacid monarchs. The light cavalry was drawn from the commoner class and served as horse archers. They fought in a basic tunic and breeches. They utilized composite bows and could shoot at attackers while riding and looking away. This method, known as the Parthian shot, was extremely effective. Parthia's strong and light cavalry proved important in several conflicts. Because the Parthians deployed infantry less frequently, they were tiny in number and mostly used to garrison forts. Camel riders armed with long lances were also used by the Parthians, who were most likely recruited from the western border or nomadic allies. The camel was more equipped than the horse to carry the rider's weight and survive severe conditions. The camel rider was able to unleash his arrows from a higher position. The Parthians did not utilize battle chariots and only used them to transport ladies who accompanied the leaders. The Parthians are documented as having gathered 50,000 troops at one time. The size of the Parthian army that was assembled generally is uncertain, as is the empire's entire population. Each division of the Parthian army had its own standard, which depicted a dragon, an eagle, or the sun. The geographical position of Parthia was critical in making it a commercial competitor for Rome. Parthia ruled over the overland silk lanes that ran through Mesopotamia. In response to Parthia's presence and authority over the silk routes through Mesopotamia, Rome established control over the southern east-west land routes through Arabia and maritime routes via the Red Sea. Caesarea, one of the ports, was strategically located to receive such goods, as well as items arriving from the Red Sea. The Parthians' trade with the east began with the infrastructure they acquired from the Seleucids. Their dominance of Armenia and prospective access to the Black Sea, as well as their dominion of Hyrcania and the Caspian Sea, provided them with access to Central Asian markets. The Royal Road, which ran east and west through Mesopotamia, cemented Parthia's status as an international trader. Nard, costus, cinnamon, ginger, and pepper arrived in the Mediterranean via the overland caravan route from northwest India, Afghanistan, and Iran to Seleucia near modern-day Baghdad, where they followed the Tigris and Euphrates to northern Mesopotamia. Another option was to load ships at India's northwest ports, coast west, and then turn up the Persian Gulf to dump at its head. Camels transported the goods to Seleucia from there. These were all countries, cities, regions, or trade routes that Parthia traded with or controlled during its heyday. Contacts with the West were established as a result of the Han Dynasty's expansionist agenda. In 115 BC, Chinese envoys were dispatched to Parthia. The exchange of token trade articles between the Parthian monarch and the Chinese delegates may have established a precedent for future, larger trade agreements. The Parthian military strength as a challenger to Rome was keeping to a strategy of selecting their battles wisely. Their use of ambush also served them well, but the Roman army's usage of shields and swords in a close, interlocking formation made them an immovable force to be reckoned with. When both sides kept to their own strategies, success was typically the result. The Roman-Parthian Wars were a series of hostilities from 54 BC to 217 AD between the Parthian Empire and the Roman Republic. It was the start of 682 years of struggle between the Romans and the Persians. With Rome's insatiable drive to expand its influence, it was Parthia that stood in the way of the Romans' eastern expansion. Parthia, on the other hand, was able to do more than just maintain its ground. Parthian military operations and warfare were ideally adapted to resist the Roman army's focused troop movements because of their distinctive hit-and-run combat tactics. With archers atop the swiftest horses and camel riders delivering a continual supply of arrows, they rendered soldiers as sitting ducks, unable to attack until at close range. The Parthians had a response when Rome's cavalry pursued them. They were so skilled at killing that they invented the Parthian shot. The Parthian archer, able to shoot backward at full speed, delivered lethal bolts at chasing horsemen. Parthian horsemen were able to attack opposing soldiers from all directions, causing confusion and destruction. Crassus undertook an invasion of Mesopotamia in 53 BC, which ended in disaster. In the Battle of Carrhae, Crassus and his son Publius were defeated and murdered by a Parthian force headed by General Surena. The majority of his forces were either killed or captured. Half of the 42,000 soldiers perished, a quarter returned to Syria, and the others became prisoners of war. This loss embarrassed Rome, since the Parthians were able to capture numerous Legionary Eagles. The Parthians captured the most like Crassus Roman prisoner of battle, disguised him as a lady, and paraded him across Parthia for all to see. The Parthians conducted attacks on Syria, and in 51 BC, headed by Crown Prince Pacorus and General Osaces, they besieged Cassius in Antioch, and caused much concern in the Roman provinces of Asia. 2 Roman legions marched to the siege's relief. Pacorus retreated, but was ambushed and slain by Cassius in his escape. Pompey maintained contact with the Parthians. Following his defeat and death, a troop led by Pacorus aided Pompeian general Caecilius Bassus. Julius Caesar devised preparations for a campaign against Parthia, but his assassination prevented the conflict from taking place. The Romans invaded Armenia in 58 AD when the Parthian ruler Vologases I forcefully established his brother Tiridates on the throne there. Tiridates was deposed by Roman soldiers led by Corbulo, who replaced him with a Cappadocian prince. Parthian reaction began, and an indecisive series of operations in Armenia followed. The conflict ended in 63 when the Romans agreed to let Tiridates and his descendants control Armenia in exchange for receiving the throne from the Roman emperor. Armenia would now be controlled by a Parthian dynasty, and despite its formal loyalty to Rome, it would be more influenced by the Parthians. In 113 AD, the Roman Emperor Trajan prioritized eastern expansions and the downfall of Parthia, successfully overrunning the Parthian capital, Ctesiphon, and establishing Parthomaspates of Parthia as a client king. Rebellions drove him out of the region afterward. Trajan invaded Armenia in 114, seized it as a Roman province, and assassinated Parthomasiris, who had been installed on the Armenian throne by his relative. The Roman emperor conquered northern Mesopotamia and annexed it to Rome in 115. The Romans next took Ctesiphon, the Parthian capital, before sailing downriver to the Persian Gulf. However, revolts arose in the eastern Mediterranean, North Africa, and northern Mesopotamia that year, while a large Jewish insurrection began in Roman territory, greatly taxing Roman military forces. Trajan's failure to capture Hatra, the capital of the Kingdom of Hatra, saved the Parthenians from ultimate defeat. Trajan's Parthenian expedition is regarded as the culmination of 2 centuries of political posturing and fierce competition in several ways. Trajan was the first emperor to successfully invade Mesopotamia. Hadrian, Trajan's successor, quickly reversed his predecessor's approach. He determined that it was in Rome's best interest to re-establish the Euphrates as its direct control boundary. He returned to their old rulers and client kings the regions of Armenia, Mesopotamia, and Adiabene. In 161, Vologases IV beat the Romans in Armenia, conquered Edessa, and destroyed Syria, reigniting the war for Armenia. A Roman counterattack, headed by Stadius Priscus, destroyed the Parthenians in Armenia in 163, putting a preferred candidate on the Armenian throne. Avidius Cassius launched an invasion of Mesopotamia the next year, winning engagements at Dura Europos and Seleucia, and sacking Ctesiphon in 165. A smallpox outbreak that had been ravaging Parthia at the time had now extended to the Roman troops. Another Roman invasion of Mesopotamia occurred in 195, led by Emperor Septimius Severus, who seized Seleucia and Babylon before sacking Ctesiphon once more in 197. These conflicts resulted in the Roman conquest of northern Mesopotamia as far north as Nisibis and Singara. The Emperor Caracalla began a last campaign against the Parthians, sacking Arbela in 216, but following his assassination, his successor Macrinus lost a fight against the Parthians at Nisibis and was compelled to pay tribute to Parthia, the last engagement of the Parthian Wars. Ardashir I was an Iranian ruler who rose to prominence while Parthia was devastated by internal warfare and Roman wars. Ardashir was helped by the terrain of Fars, which was isolated from the rest of Iran. In 224, the Parthian king ordered the governor of Khuzestan to conduct war against Ardashir, but Ardashir prevailed in the succeeding wars. Artabanus faced Ardashir in combat at Hormozgan in a second effort to defeat him, and the former died. Ardashir invaded the western regions of the now defunct Parthian Empire after the death of the Parthian monarch. Sassanid Emperor Ardashir I eventually crushed Parthia when he entered Ctesiphon, crowned in 224 at Ctesiphon as the sole ruler of Persia. Ardashir took the title Shahan Shah, or King of Kings, bringing the 400-year-old Parthian Empire to an end and beginning 4 centuries of Sassanid rule. At its greatest territorial extent, the Sasanian Empire encompassed all of present-day Iran and Iraq and stretched from the eastern Mediterranean to parts of modern-day Pakistan, as well as from parts of southern Arabia to the Caucasus and Central Asia. The Sassanids were more centralized than the Parthian dynasty. The Romans were largely the aggressors until the Sassanids came to power. Thank you for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification button on your way out. Also, suggest topics related to your interest in the comments section. See you next time.